Emerson is the captain of the cheer team as well as a member of the student council, DECA, and the yearbook club. Next year, she plans to attend either Stonehill College, my alma mater, or Roger Williams University to major in history. Fabulous subject to do. This is her second year presenting for TED, so Emmy's one of our vets, and she plans to focus on history and its involvement with the world around us because she absolutely loves the subject matter. I can relate. And so therefore, Emmy wants people to look at history from a different perspective and appreciate the ways that history and studying history are beneficial to all of us throughout our lives. Please welcome Emerson Dlugosinski as she presents History Apply Now.
Technical difficulties, I guess. From the moment I started my education about 12 years ago, I quickly learned that I love history. Learning about the history of my own country and that of many others always seemed to captivate my attention. It was like being fed an elaborate story that was that much more incredible due to the fact that it was all nonfiction, and these events shaped the world we live in today. It's crazy to think that if one thing would have happened differently in the course of time, or not at all for that matter, that we could have been faced with a completely different reality. Just to put it in perspective, the book What If discusses a multitude of alternate outcomes to different turning points in military history. Some of the possibilities that they propose include the Battle of Gettysburg being fought in 1862 instead and resulting in a Confederate victory, or an Allied defeat on D-Day leading to nuclear devastation for Germany. For every major historical event, there's a counterfactual that suggests an incredibly different world for us. Scenarios like this have never failed to mesmerize my mind, but despite my own personal fascination of history, I've come to realize that among other students, I'm in the minority. I remember back in elementary and middle school when our teachers would collect tallies of everyone's favorite subject. To my amazement, history would usually round up the least amount of votes. But everyone has their strong and weak points, so taking a step back, I can understand why someone wouldn't necessarily love history as much as I do. But I find there to be an unusually large amount of dislike amongst the subject for my peers. Contrary to popular belief, history isn't just about memorizing dates and details. It's more so about the big picture, recognizing patterns, and making connections. In history, we're taught the traditional norms of society. We learn how things are supposed to be in the world. History teaches about both positive and negative historical events, showing us what is to be categorized as normal versus unusual. So when something that falls outside of the historical norm occurs, we take that as a sign of warning. As we continue to analyze history, our recognition of patterns increases and connections, both big and small, can begin to be formulated. One prime example of this is the 10 Stages of Genocide model by Dr. Gregory Stanton. Classification, symbolization, discrimination, dehumanization, organization, polarization, preparation, persecution, execution, and denial. This is what it takes to successfully wipe out almost an entire sector of the population, and examples of these stages can be seen in every genocide, whether it's the Armenian genocide or the Holocaust. This model is not necessarily linear, however, which can sometimes blur the lines to society as to what is really taking place. But by establishing the standard pattern, historians, politicians, and we the people should be able to recognize when a series of events begins to take the form of a genocide. By studying history and familiarizing ourselves with patterns similar to this, we can do our best to intervene and take action when red flags start to pop up. And hopefully, one day, we can make sure that the infamous never again vow finally sticks. In a similar sense, history helps you easily make connections. If you paid attention in US history, you remember the anti-Irish sentiment of the 19th century, marked by no Irish need apply signs. Xenophobia, specifically of the Irish, caught on in the United States at this time and created a very heavy discrimination against Irish immigrants living in the US. Parties like the Know Nothings arose, which was an anti-Catholic and anti-immigration American nativist political party who worked to isolate and marginalize these Irish immigrants. Their unfamiliarity and religious intolerance that these American nativists harbored made for a very unpleasant experience for Irish immigrants living in the US during this time. Sound familiar? Islamophobia has become very prevalent in the United States and in many other countries, strongly in part due to the events of 9/11. Although horrific, it's not uncommon to see holy Muslim sites being vandalized or even destroyed. Muslims and refugees of Islamic nations are constantly the victims of hate crimes and face discrimination, including racial profiling worldwide. The stereotype and stigma attached to being Muslim also plays into politics, with radical parties forming on an Islamophobic platform. As a whole, the US hasn't exactly given Muslims a warm welcome to our so-called land of the free. As you can see, these two time periods share uncanny various similarities. And while that may have been a bit of an easy one to connect the dots to, through research and analysis, historians are able to develop much deeper connections that show us how to view the world and how to approach our means towards it. There are countless of historical comparisons that can be made, and we can oftentimes see pieces of history being emulated in the present. There's a famous quote that I'm sure many of you have heard at one point or another. Those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it. If we can't learn from our mistakes, then history will continue to run its course and teach us the same lessons over and over again until we make a change. But by being knowledgeable about history, we can work to ensure that the shameful pieces of it remain in our textbooks. On a more personal level of education, history is different than other core subjects. The application that comes from the study is not nearly as obvious as it is with math, science, and English. You may think that everything you learn in high school will not apply to your world after you graduate, but we all know that there are many aspects of our education that are highly valuable. First and foremost, history classes can be molded to fit all different types of learners. Whether you're an auditory, visual, or experiential learner, there's some way that history can be molded to fit you. History tells us why things are the way that they are and how our world came to be. It teaches tolerance, morals, compassion, shows standards, and marks precedents. Themes are huge in history, and without even realizing that it's happening, you're being conditioned to recognize the trends that run and see how everything connects. And that's the main goal of history. You also learn how to debate, you gain new perspectives, you become more academically curious, you start asking questions, you start asking why. History prepares you for college and higher education as well. History classes help you develop critical thinking skills, which are advantageous to all students regardless of what career path you intend to pursue. History classes teach you how to read and write in a professional format, how to consume a mass amount of information, analyze it, and determine what's important and what's filler. One of the most important tools that you can gain from history is the ability to properly research. Every year we spend in a history class, the more advanced and capable we as students become as researchers. We get better and better at finding really good, useful information. The more and more that we research, the better that our education will become in our understanding of history around us. It only takes a few seconds to Google something and discover thousands of results which may or may not be 100% factual. But if you're looking to find accurate and trustworthy information, you now have the skills to do so, looking through media and finding credible statistics and facts. History is interconnected with an assortment of different career fields, so even if you don't have any intention of becoming a history teacher or even a writer for the History Channel, there's still a chance that a degree in history will look particularly good on a resume. From business to law to communications to geography and everywhere in between, there are so many places that history can take you, and this doesn't even begin to scratch the surface. And while being well-versed in history not only makes you marketable as a job applicant, it also helps in your everyday basic life. In studying history, you learn in depth about government and politics, which is extremely important. Many of you are up-and-coming young adults who will soon have the power to vote in general and primary elections. You need to have a good foundation of historical knowledge in order to comprehend global, national, and local politics and truly understand what's going on in the political scope. In today's times, where students are beginning to vocalize their opinions now more than ever, it's especially critical to be educated and know what you're talking about to avoid making factually incorrect statements. Stand up for what you believe in and fight for a change. Use your voice, but make sure that the words you're projecting make sense. As humans, we need history to improve the way we live, learn, work, and survive. Marcus Garvey once said, "A people without the knowledge of their past history, origin, and culture is like a tree without roots. How could it be possible for us to ever move forward if we didn't know how we got here?" History is all around us, everywhere we look, and the beauty lies within its ever-evolving nature. Every day, we collectively write a new page in the book of history, and as we learn more about the 5,000 and some odd years of our recorded past, we expand our minds and travel back in time to view the world through lenses different than our own. But don't confuse history with a narrative, because it's not the study of the past, it's the foundation of the future. Thank you.
Well done, Emme. Our second presenter for this block is Mackenzie Canuel.